but yeah, I guess yeah, welcome to Wizards and Warp Drives, our mine and AJ's little baby. I don't know whether to use my real name or my alias. I don't know. Everyone
Well,
knows me as
I use my real name, but nobody knows what the AJ stands for, so I'll stick with that.
yeah. Well, yeah, you've got no. Everyone knows who you are. No one knows who I am. You might have seen me in the message boards or something. I don't know. My name's Nacho. Anyway, we're I guess we're a couple of middle-aged, small New Zealand nerds. We've similar age, similar background. We have quite a few things in common. Obviously, everyone knows AJ as the D&D lore guy. We probably will touch on some D&D lore, but I think probably there's other things we can talk about as well. I think probably AJ's probably sick of constantly talking about D&D lore. So
you don't get into making D&D content videos for a living if you get in any way sick of D&D. So I'm impervious to being sick of D&D. I think we've established that.
Yeah, that is true. I'm sure we'll touch
what I
on
am
some...
not impervious to is the fact that like I am bottlenecked into talking about D&D on social media because that's what everybody expects of me. If I start talking about anything else, it's like a sunk cost, waste of time, not making any money of it, sort of thing. So even though I know so much about lots of different nerdy things, I mean, look at the shelf behind me. I've got varied interests. I can't talk about it.
Yeah, I've got a few toys behind me as well.
By the way, if they can see the screens of us talking, because we are actually looking at each other while we do this podcast, your name is on the bottom corner thingy. So.
Oh yeah, true. Oh yeah, so you can find me.
Yeah.
I will probably edit that out at some point. It doesn't matter. I'm not like I don't know. Yeah, so I guess we decided that we'd rather with nerds, they complain a lot. And they are very vocal. So I think we kind of thought maybe we'd talk about things that we like and try and bring some sort of positivity back to this culture. And AJ's a walking encyclopedia of geek knowledge. I'm probably more of a casual fan. So I'll probably be using this opportunity to learn some stuff myself. So each week I think we're going to dive into, I don't know, it could be an iconic character, it could be a comic, could be a video game. Who knows? It's whatever we feel. We're kind of just making this up as we go, and I guess it will eventually find its voice and find its legs.
Podcast really takes off by episode 43.
They really worked it out.
Yeah.
He figured out how to edit.
Really comes into its own.
So we're just going to catch up every Sunday morning. It's Sunday here in New Zealand. I don't know what it's like for you. It's pretty cold and wet.
It is
horrible.
Absolutely, as we say in New Zealand, pissing down. It's been raining solidly for the last 2 hours at least, I think. My cat even came in, like, cradled underneath my desk because he was just man, it's like raining hard out, Dad. I'm like, yeah.
I've got one dog asleep beneath my feet and one on the couch next to me. So I am recording this in a shed, so I do apologize if you can hear any noise, any rain. But yeah, this week I think we decided a character that we both really love. We're gonna take a look at one Mr. Judge Joseph Dredd.
Yep. Lawman of the future.
The lawman. I am the law.
The most authoritarian fascist comic book character, and yet one of the most punk rock characters also, ironically, at the same time.
He is badass. So so I'll kick it off, I guess, with a bit of some facts that I found on the old internets. So obviously the origin and creation of Dredd. So he first appeared in 1977. Good year. Star Wars.
Yep.
Sex Pistols.
Yep. Thatcher Britain. People still wearing their entire family in brown and yellow pantsuits. None of the fashionable stuff that you thought the 70s was.
Oh,
It was all late
70s
60s.
70s Britain was horrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could even
Couches
feel
were
its influence here in New Zealand. You could feel it.
couches were like covered in green carpet. This is where all the kitsch stuff that you see.
Everyone's house smelt like an ashtray.
Yeah. Kids were selling plastic cups and plastic bags to raise money for their school.
Yeah. He was created by a John Wagner, and I'm going to probably mispronounce the artist's name. Carlos Inzaguirre.
Mm-hmm. Pretty good, yeah.
So yeah, Wagner sort of became the definitive writer for Dredd. He was based on Dirty Harry, which came out in 1973, and I think there was actually, in the early 80s, there was talks of like Clint Eastwood possibly being Dredd.
Wow.
Obviously,
he's got the mouth for it.
And the artistic design was taken from a sort of a cult classic film called Death Race 2000, where a character by the name of Frankenstein, who was played by Kill Bill's David Carradine, Mr. Kung Fu himself, he was wearing sort of a black leather helmet and driving around on a motorbike. Strangely enough, as well, that was one of Stallone's earliest films.
Really?
Yeah. So
I did not know that.
7 degrees of separation there.
Yeah, that's an interesting tie-in. I know that the name Judge Dredd was not Carlos and Wagner. That was from Pat Smith, and he had it earmarked for a more supernatural series, which Judge Dredd certainly no stranger to supernatural stuff, and I think maybe that tied into it, the whole Judge Death thing and all that sort of thing. But, the whole comic book is notable for like everything in the kitchen sink. It's like a real good sci-fi where the whole vibe of 2000 AD was you never knew what was going to happen, and any particular they would always come up with new storylines, new things, and it was just like there was very little creative control.
So, I mean, we'll get into more details as we go, but obviously it was set in this dystopian future. Mainly in
it's important. It's important to say that it was like this is the second issue of the magazine, and they had introduced Judge Dredd via some advertising prior to the magazine being published. And in the first issue of the magazine, there was an advert for Judge Dredd, so they already had the idea of what the character looked like and stuff. And then the first comic strip appeared in the second issue of the magazine. Part of many different storylines, but Judge Dredd became more and more and more and more the flagship of 2000 AD.
Yeah, his popularity it's still there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think it was originally set in 1999 Mega City 1.
It was set in the New York area of Mega City 1, but they already established that Mega City 1 went all the way from Montreal down to like Florida. Like it's
pretty much the entire eastern coast of
100 million people crammed in there.
And it's aged as the comics have gone on as well. Like they've kept the continuity of it's always been that from 77 to 99 as the comics progressed. It's always been that sort of 20 odd years.
Yeah,
in the future.
Yeah. And Judge Dredd, of course, is now Old Man Dredd because he's aged along with us. So that's kind of cool. And so it's almost like more than anything else, it's targeted at a specific readership the entire way through its career. It's like it's never been revamped for a new audience. It's always just like, we know who the reader is.
There was a brief period, I think, in the 90s, around the same time as the film, where DC did a
You'll have to forgive me a big gap of knowledge on my case there because I just didn't follow it through the 90s.
I think they called it Legends of Law. It was a very short run. I got it because it was in the 90s there was a period where we all thought if we bought number one issues of things, we were going to be millionaires. They were releasing all these like variant covers and this whole Image Comics Spawn area.
Yeah, Liefeld and those guys are responsible for all that. And McFarlane.
Yeah, McFarlane was a big one on that. So I guess maybe we just talk briefly about 2000 AD before we get into Dredd himself. I mean,
yeah, my earliest memories of 2000 AD was my friend Jason. He had a big, he had some like wine boxes that were full of these newsprint looking, like they looked like newspapers, printed in black and white. They had a few color pages, but otherwise they were very cheaply made, basically by the same print presses that make like it wasn't magazines or comics. It was more like a newspaper thing. And
Yeah, it was a
you still
strange
see,
format, wasn't it? It was
yeah,
a different size. All those English comics were that format, though, weren't they?
yeah, and their money is different sizes from ours too, which is always weird. It's always bigger.
Yeah,
What the pound notes? This big thing like this.
yeah. There was because as kids there was a series of there was American comics and there was English comics, and there was like I remember them being so distinctively different on the shelves.
Yeah,
Like Wizards and Chips. That was a big one when I was growing up.
Viz comics.
Viz.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
the English were big on the annuals, like putting out an annual every month, every year, and also they'd have special editions of things where they collect all the comics together. Whereas the Americans generally didn't do that until graphic novels came about. But earlier on, there just wasn't anything like that.
Yeah, and 2000 AD,
did,
2000 AD was rock and roll, man. It was nothing like the I think you got to mention how different it was.
Yeah, America had the Comics Code Authority, and England did not. So England just sort of went, oh, it's a comic book, anything goes. Plus, they had a level of gore and stuff because this is right outside, so part of the older mindset of England is that a lot of propaganda for kids against Nazis and all the bad people was in comic books. Like Eagle magazine was all like, pilots and adventure soldiers and stuff like that. It was very much soldier stuff. And so there was a level of violence and stuff that was okay in the comics, generally speaking, because it was like, it's the good guys and they're gunning down bad guys and and blood and gore and stuff. Not so much blood and gore, but it's amazing what you can get away with. And in 2000 AD, it was just like, let's push the limit. No response. Let's push it even further. No response. Okay, let's just maximum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember there was a who did Commando comics?
I don't know.
That was another weird that was like a little booklet.
Yeah. There is so many. Like they had publications like one was called Just for Girls. It was comics just for girls. And
didn't work.
No, of course not. And tons of other things. Yeah. If you market anything just for women don't want it. No. Doesn't work that way.
Women's Weekly.
Yeah, Women's Weekly. Also, anything that
which came out once a month.
Yeah, anything that women publish is not smut. It can't be by default because the only people who object to smut are women. So therefore, it doesn't compute that they would not. Yeah, so fanfics and stuff like that. No, that's not porn. But we know it's porn, ladies.
I guess you couldn't call it Women's Monthly, though, could you?
No. we had. What do we have? Well, yeah, we had letters to the editor, and you can't. I would never believe this would happen to anyone.
Well, that's probably something else to mention about 2000 AD that was unique as well. Was the editor? Yeah.
Thug, right. So one of the things that a later editor wanted to drop from 2000 AD, but he got huge amounts of fan feedback saying, no, don't you dare, is Tharg the Mighty. So Tharg is this alien from, I'm not sure if he's from our galaxy or another one, but here he's basically this cartoon character editor of the magazine saying, I brought you these stories from the future, from 2000 AD, all through 2000. Yeah. And he had his own language, Borag Thung Earthlets, and he had some weird little third eye thingamajiggy. There was like comic episodes where these little aliens landed on him and tried to mine down and get his blood, and once they got it had too much thrill power and they all exploded. It
was taking the concept that what Marvel were doing was Stan Lee.
Yeah.
And just making it punk rock.
Yeah. Just like this is not a real person. Plus, it was like their Ronald McDonald character or anything. But I mean, nobody expected 2000 AD to become a 50-year edifice of what it was.
That was, at the time, working in comics was considered a shit job. We watched a documentary, and how ironic it is, that these people were hoping to get jobs in magazines like House and Gardens and they were just, this was just like crap work for them.
Yeah. And nowadays, the more obscure and indie something is, the more valuable it is. It's like if I found a box of comics that some guy had done before he did something when he was famous, man, that would be gold.
Oh, and they were just misusing, like they had, there was a thing where there was a leak and they were just using the artist's work to patch up. Like.
So yeah, the thing with 2000 AD that we discovered during the documentary is that all of the artist's work in the magazine was signed over wholly to the ownership of the magazine, and the people that were receiving all these priceless one-off artworks and stuff were just had so much stuff that they were like shoving it into doors to stop drafts and cutting up things like on it, because it was nice thick pieces of paper that all this artwork was painted on. Great for a cutting board for your sandwiches. Oh, the pain. But yeah,
that's the industry in a whole, though.
That was much like certain companies at the moment are very exploitive of their creative staff. Same thing back then, because they had no other options. It's like, well, you either work here or nowhere. Like nobody else is doing this sort of comics. But yeah, it's very, very interesting in that their whole attitude towards it was, well, Plus, I mean, imagine editing like a bunch of cartoonists, because they had no such thing back in those days of, like, as you say, all of those cartoonists and stuff would have had jobs and stuff during the day. So getting them to put together like 6 pages of highly detailed art all done is very difficult.
Even when they got, so back in the day, this is for you, for the kids out there, back in the day, there used to be this thing called checks. It's how you got paid. And even on the back of the checks that these guys were receiving was, if you accept this check, you are giving up all your rights to this character.
Yeah.
Just by accepting this pay, we own it, essentially.
Yeah. So if you came up with a cartoon character, a little boxy guy with like chew up teeth, he eats garbage and stuff, I'm going to call him Rojaws, and then I'm going to get my paycheck, and it's like Rojaws is now wholly owned by the person that you just submitted it to.
Yeah.
All of your artwork, all your stories, everything is owned by them. So, and that never really changed in 2000 AD. So that made them, that really hurt the title, I think, in the long run, as we discovered in the documentary.
Yeah, it definitely hit a low point in the 90s and was probably a contributing factor to the movie, the 95 movie, because they needed to make some money.
Yeah.
And Dredd was their cash cow.
Yeah, it's their Wolverine, basically.
Yeah, so that's why, you can thank that for the Stallone movie, really, and why it's so creatively different. But well, anyway,
I can understand why an editor would do that. It's because artists are so flaky. Okay, let's just get that out of the bag. Artists are incredibly flaky because doing it as a profession is incredibly difficult. Like, there is 1% of the population that sits down and draws for fun. There's 1% of that 1% who actually turn it into some sort of a job, and there's 1% of those people who can regularly put out that sort of creative content, and it's only for a limited period of time before they burn out. So being a comic editor,
comic book art is not like other art, because you're drawing panels, so you're drawing motion. You're not just drawing, I'm going to draw this really cool picture. You've got to consistently draw this character and create, movement and life with this character. It can't be inconsistent.
Yep.
It's a whole different type of art.
Yeah, I had a teacher, English teacher, that was arguing that comics and stuff were inferior to regular communication. I said, no, it's much superior to text communication, like a book and stuff, or a novel. And she says, why is that? And I just grabbed a comic out of my bag and put it down and said, see how they've drawn the letters here of the person talking? You can see that he's shouting because the bubble is like this. You can see that there's more emphasis on that or this because you've got a facial expression. It's like a novel can't do that. And she had to concede the point. She still wanted me to write stories.
We should probably actually briefly mention, just before we move on back into Dredd, some really famous people cut their teeth at 2000 AD. Really famous.
Yeah.
Like big names in the industry. We're talking like Alan Moore. We're talking Neil Gaiman, Mark Miller.
We're talking the guys who did like The Watchmen and like The Dark Knight, all the Dark Knight movies, Batman movies and stuff.
The boys. Absolutely, Brian Boland.
Yeah, some amazing artists. Like I've waxed lyrical about Simon Bisley. He's my favorite artist, one of my favorite artists in the world.
Yeah,
not just comics, just in general, his art style and everything. And I just wish I could be him.
things like The Watchmen, The Dark Knight Returns, The Killing Joke, Sandman. Um, these would not
Hellraiser.
exist. This would not exist without 2000 AD. This comic was influential at growing talent.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much what its downfall was. It became a place that you went to. It became an apprenticeship for a lot of people.
Yeah. Their first gig.
Yeah, in the end. Yeah, that's
it's
where
like,
you went.
Like you get a job at McDonald's, you get a job at 2000 AD, and then you get hired by somebody else,
Get noticed at 2000 AD and then move to the States.
Yeah, so their strip that they put into the publication was almost like an advertising portfolio. So they'd do good work, but they weren't expected to stick around. That's the other reason why they wholly owned the stuff that the artist did, and they carried on doing that, because there was it was, like I say, it was flaky. You never knew whether the artist was going to stick around, and if they owned the property, you lost contact with them. You couldn't publish anything that they'd done. So if you owned it, then you could get another artist in and say, draw this, and they would. Yeah. But that also gave the opportunity for artists to write on, like, not many other industries in the world could you say, I worked on Wolverine. Like, I was responsible for Wolverine from the 1971 to 1972. That was me, all me. I'm part of Wolverine's legacy. So there's that with Dredd and all those other sort of stories as well, is that these are, during this era and that era of this writer and that writer. Also, we should mention that they put the credits for the writers and the letterists and the inkers and stuff in the actual comic.
When did that come out, though? That wasn't till a bit later on, and it's the credit box.
I'm trying to think. I can't remember seeing any in number 2. They certainly didn't refer to them as droids until later on. But it became a staple in the magazine later on that you would have the credits for the droids that did the work, whereas Marvel and stuff like that generally no.
So I guess we should focus back on old Dreddy here. So I mean, so I guess we have to determine what is a judge,
right? So Mega City 1, the 1999. Imagine the future where there's been a nuclear war, so the East and the West have gone at it, and most of the world is a nuclear wasteland. That's the other interesting thing about Judge Dredd as a setting. Like, think of it like a role-playing game. You've got most of the game can take place in the mega city, and you never need to leave that because it's 100 million people living in the entire eastern seaboard of Americas. And so anything that you can imagine goes, including lots of like traditional places that are now mega cityarized.
They introduced around that time as well, I think, in Britain, is when they started building those council. You've seen that film Attack the Block?
Yep.
Those council type buildings, and I think that's what they brought to Mega City as well. That type of stuff.
Yeah, Cape Town is also like that as well. You've got there's one particularly famous block of flats which has got like a big empty atrium in the middle of it, and all of the residents just ended up throwing all their garbage into the middle of it, and they had to concrete it into a big mound.
Right. That's where the 2012 film is filmed in Cape Town.
There you go. Yeah, it's a perfect example. A lawless city that has raving mobs of like rioters that just do it for fun on a regular basis, just go and crash a building, So,
basically the judge he's the police, he's the judge, he's the jury, he's the executioner. He can enforce the law all the way through. And there are different types of judges within Mega City as well, I guess, most famously, Dredd is a street judge.
Yeah, you got street judges, you got technical judges that do sort of, surveillance and reporting and all that sort of stuff. You've got medical judges, of course, who just, recycle bodies essentially. Oh, yeah, that's another thing that we should mention. Bodies are recycled in Mega City 1. So they just collect them up, and then they just harvest their organs and then turn the rest into cat food and what else, whatever's needed. You got 100 million people. You need to, so they've got algae farms and fake food and all that sort of stuff. All of those sort of topics are explored in different frogs or different storylines of Mega City over the years. Outside of Mega City, you've got the Wasteland, the Cursed Earth, and then you've got other mega cities which are located elsewhere. Like Texas has got one, England has got like a mega city, and Russia's got like a mega city, and China's got like a mega city. Then you got like
this one in Australia as well.
Yeah, off-world. So And off-world, of course, in in Judge Dredd, it's not just planet Earth, but we have space travel and other colonies and stuff like that going on. So those are almost like completely different storylines. It feels very different from Mega City 1 and Cursed Earth storylines. It almost feels like you're stepping into totally different worlds when they're all really connected, but they're just walled off from each other so succinctly.
So obviously, the things that make the Judges is that so cool for us is visually, like their uniforms, the helmet, the badge, the armor.
Yeah. So it like starts off in a chaotic time where there's been a nuclear war. The populations are just completely, ballistic. But it's not like, Mad Max or something. Like civilization has not completely been destroyed by a nuclear war, which is, I think, quite reasonable. And then it's like, what do you do with the rest of the populations and stuff? Well, what's left over?
I actually have a Mad Max connection, I learned. So I don't know if you remember the one Oz. There was a Judge Dredd storyline called Oz where he was chasing a guy similar to the Silver Surfer.
Ah.
And he went to Australia?
No.
Okay. So there is a one called that. The writer for that particular comic went on to do the screenplay for Fury Road.
Wow.
7 degrees of separation.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Also, I guess the judges were there's the Academy of Law where they were recruited much like the Jedi.
Yeah, so it sort of starts out where there's police, but the police just like with their existing powers and stuff just can't handle a population that huge that are just like that crazy violent and stuff. And so the judges basically became a gang, and they became the top gang, and they became a militant policing gang that just controlled the rest of the population as best they could. But they can only get to a certain amount of crimes and stuff. So Mega City is like, you do the crime and you hope you don't come across a judge, because if you do, it's all over. That sort of thing. It's like they don't deal with the petty day to day.
They don't execute people as often as you think.
No.
The ISO cube is the most common sentence.
Yeah. What is an isolation cube? We ask.
We'll get there. We'll get there.
Yeah.
Other things I guess they got that we need to talk about is obviously they got a big ass motorbike.
Yep. Lawmaster.
The Lawmaster. That's got weapons and stuff on it as well, hasn't it?
Yep. Twin cannons. Yeah. It's got fully autopiloting. It can fire on its own. It can pick targets on its own. It's directed by Mac, which is the what is it? Multi-access computer or something or other. So it's basically AI. The Lawgiver pistol is keyed to the
not Apple Mac.
No. I got a page open somewhere. There is actually
it's got a dent. So yeah, that was cool. The Lawgiver gun. It's got different types of ammunition as well.
Yeah. You got high explosive. You got armor piercing, dum rounds, split rounds. Yep.
Gas rounds.
Ricochet rounds.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's also built into it's got a DNA scanner on it as well. So
can't just pick up a judge's gun.
No.
Yeah. And those concepts have been around for a very long time, like not just with the Dredd movie. The Dredd movie was very true to the topic, like very true to the lore of of Judge Dredd.
Oh.
So yeah, it was really good. I mean, the Carl Urban one was just fantastic. There's been a lot of really good fan fic movies of Judge Dredd as well.
We'll dive into the movies and stuff a bit later, but I've got some thoughts on both films. Definitely. So obviously, who is Dredd though? Why is he the judge? Why is he? What makes him so special?
Well, if you go with the story, he's a genetically created individual. So he's a mixture of all the DNA of previous judges, chief justices, I guess, of the thing.
Yeah, he's a clone of the first chief judge, I believe. Fargo.
Okay. Because in the first prog, I think it was Goody or Goodman who was the chief judge, and Magruder and various other chief justices, including one who's gone all senile, and is kind of locked away. But Judge,
that's Fargo.
That's Fargo. So Dredd still visits Fargo. And
so there were two clones. There was him and his brother Rico.
Yeah. Rico came along much later in the story. I didn't hear any mention of Rico until the actual Dredd movie. So I was not aware of that storyline until much later on. There's also the Judge Child storyline, which took place a lot in The Curse of Earth. Yeah. There's so much that we're going to have to skip over because we're talking 40 years of comic book history of weekly and daily comics.
I've got a few favorites we'll go through. So obviously, and we touched on Mega City 1. So I guess, there's interesting things about Mega City as well. What is illegal in Mega City?
It depends on what strata of Mega City you're in. Because like the Undercity is like, if you go to the Empire State Building and stand on the Empire State Building and then imagine that there's another city built on top of the Empire State Building, that is kind of what Mega City, and like everything below Empire State Building is slum, ghetto, / there could be aliens and mutants living there. And there are aliens and mutants living in Mega City 1.
I would be fucked in Mega City 1 because two things that are illegal are sugar and caffeine.
Yeah, which is why Umpty Candy and various other things became highly legal. Professional eaters, like there was 1 ton Tony. So humans have reached the point where they become 1 ton in weight and have little wheels on their gut to wheel around. Because food, basically there's nothing to do in Mega City 1 apart from day-to-day life, trying to get by, eating, sex,
obesity
entertainment
in America. What is this far-fetched future?
Entertainment or crime. That was basically all there is to do in Mega City 1. And the people who turn to eating, they want sugar, and sugar is illegal. So
also something called what was it, Stookie? Do you remember that?
Stookie is, I think it's a drug.
That was the main drug. The one in the movie Slow Mo, that was just made up for the film, I understand. I don't think that's actually canon.
But so good. So good. It wouldn't have worked in a comic, obviously, Slow Mo, and it's just like, how do you represent that in a drawn panel? Be tricky.
Obviously, illegal gambling, weapon smuggling, human trafficking, mutants as well is another big part of 2000 AD. Which is mostly where the Cursed Earth, where most of the mutants are.
Yep, I mean, Judge Anderson, she's a mutant. It's established in the second Dredd movie that she was born a little bit too close to the wall, and she got radiation from the Cursed Earth. So essentially, and then you've got the whole off-site, like generally speaking, you've got 2 choices if you're born a mutant in Mega City 1. 1 is exile to the Cursed Earth. 2 is you go off-world and you become a bounty hunter. And those are called the Strontium Dogs, or SD,
which is a whole other 2000 AD series.
But it's part of the same world. So Johnny Alpha is like the mutant version of Judge Dredd, you could say. He's got the same sort of build. He was often drawn by the same artist, but very different sort of storyline. And there's time travel and all sorts of like the weapons and stuff that Johnny Alpha has is just next level. Like he's got time warp grenades and stuff like that. So cool.
I never read much of that series. I wish I did. It's definitely something I'm going to probably go back and have a look at.
It's one of the first times where they've where I remember them writing an accent, like the Scottish accent, dinner, and actually like writing DINNAE is don't, like dinner. Didn't go down.
There were a lot of Scotsmen working for.
There were
2008.
Like let's put some like blather in there. It worked so well, like Midden-Face McNulty and Sternhammer is.
What was Wagner? What nationality was he?
He doesn't talk very much. I think he's English.
He talks like Dredd.
Yeah.
Those interviews, like he's got that
the
stoic.
The first issue of the magazine, there's a character in there where it's like England has been invaded by this made-up, Asian country, and it's all over. England has surrendered, and there's this one guy who comes home from work driving a lorry, and he's like, "Where's my family?" It's like, "Your family's been killed by who? By those guys." And he picks up his shotgun. Not if I've got anything to do. It's like, no, they've taken over the country. they haven't taken over my country. It's like, I'm going to declare war on them myself. And I was like, that's Wagner. That's what he would do. He would pick up a gun. It's like,
there was a lot. That was the 70s, though, man. It was most plots of 70s films.
Yeah, the guy looks like he was just like, yeah, he looks like Conan. He looks like Charles Bronson's dad.
So obviously, yeah, we touched on Judge Anderson.
Yeah,
she's an important part of the Dredd.
A lot of the supernatural stuff. Judge Death is contained in Judge Anderson. She becomes his living prison. So that's interesting.
Yeah. So for those that don't know, she is a is it PSI judge? Is that how you?
Yeah, judge, psionic abilities.
So she has telepath. Which is obviously very handy for finding out if people are guilty or getting information or...
Yeah, it's the last thing you want is a telepathic cop that's got the power to kill you. That's scary.
So I really love the way they portrayed that in the Dredd film, where had this really fucking dark scene in that Dredd film where like she's got this perp and...
Oh, the elevator scene.
What am I thinking about? And he's thinking about raping her. And it's just... and then she starts to fuck with his head.
Yeah, she's like, she's like, child, please. I've seen much worse. This is what I'll do to you. And he's like, wets himself. Yeah.
So cool.
So you're trying mind games against a psychic? Bad idea.
Yeah, Rico Dredd is another character that popped up. He was created by Wagner. Apparently, he first appeared in 1977.
Really?
Issue number 30, yeah. He's Judge Dredd's clone brother, turned criminal.
Originally I think he was. They were in the academy together. Rico was actually better and scoring better marks than him. But he was running a protection racket, and Dredd dopped him in.
And another one, is Chief Justice Fargo, who was also appeared in the same issue, 1977, number 30. He is the first chief judge of Mega City and the founder of the judge system. Fargo is basically the template for Dredd and his clone brother Fargo.
Right. So it's like you almost got like you've almost just like missed the formative years, but other than that, you're right from the very beginning of the judges right up to current day, present day sort of thing.
So I think they were both portrayed in the Stallone film. I think what's his name? He just passed away recently. Max
Sydow.
Max von the guy that was also Ming the Merciless.
Yeah, that's Max Sydow.
Yeah. I think
There comes a time when the jewels lose their luster, and all that's left is a king's desire, love for his daughter. That guy. I'm going to the cursed earth. He's really like his accent is very good for big melodramatic speeches.
Yeah, I mean, I just know it through the whole.
I go to take justice to the lawless. Walks outside, gets radiation poisoning, dies.
We'll briefly touch on these guys. I don't think they're very important, but I think they're quite cool. It's the Angel Gang. They pop up. They're more comic relief.
Yeah.
Mean Machine. They're basically a bunch of mutants that hang out in the cursed earth.
Mutant cannibals. I think most people as a cannibal that live out in the cursed earth. Either that or very mutant. Yeah.
They're very Mad Max in their design.
Yeah.
I think they got the look of Mean Machine right in the Stallone film. I think that was probably one of my positives of that film.
Yep. Yeah.
But obviously, probably the big one is Judge Death and the Dark Judges.
That would be a movie.
He came out in 1980. So obviously, he is a twisted judge from another dimension where life itself is considered a crime.
Yeah. So
he even has a catchphrase. So Judge obviously has a very famous catchphrase. I am the law. Yep. And Judge Death also has a famous catchphrase, which I quite like, which is the crime is life and the sentence is death.
Yeah.
So
he's like he was part of a bunch of judges called what are they?
The dark judges.
So they're from different dimensions.
Mortis.
Yeah. Judge Death, Judge Mortis, and then there's Excalibur. Basically like the four horses of the apocalypse.
Yes.
So one's a famine one, and one's like I'm not too sure about the guy with the
pestilence, war,
pestilence, and death. essentially.
I recently just watched Neil Gaiman's Good Omens, so I've got the
Right. I think there was an Inferno one as well. Hang on, let me just double check here.
just the look of death though was cool.
Yeah.
You know,
pterodactyl on his shoulder always moving.
Yeah. Even as a kid, I mean, you were just immediately drawn. Yeah, he is. You know, you're just drawn to that image of an undead judge, and yeah, he is a complete badass.
Mm.
Brian Boland, I think, was the original artist that did. Who Brian Boland went on to become a very famous DC artist. He went on to draw The Killing Joke is probably his most famous, famous book, I think.
Ah.
He did with Alan Moore, which has that iconic, his iconic drawing of the Joker, which I think went on to become pretty much the go-to Joker image, for a lot of. I certainly had a lot of T-shirts and stuff with that Brian Boland interpretation.
I found the Dark Judges. Yeah, so we got Death, who's got a pterodactyl on one shoulder and his bony plate on the other. You've got the Famine guy, who basically had a cow skull.
That's Mortis, I believe his name was.
Yep. The other guy with the bat winged, the dragon wings helmet and sort of a grilled great helm faceplate. And then the other guy had a trident and he was on fire and his name was Judge Fire.
It was obviously late in the 2080 studios when they got to the fourth guy.
Yeah. But I mean, yeah, they're very close. Oh yeah, and the guy with the big helmet thing, he had like gym traps, big bear traps for his shoulder pads.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were great. So,
but the one I remember of Judge Death, he was it was a guy who got recycled. So they went through the whole person got killed, and then he was going through the resc thingy, and he was still alive, and he was basically getting he woke up when all his teeth were getting ripped out. And then,
did you watch that that little YouTube video I sent you the other day?
Yeah,
Super Fiend.
Yeah, unfortunately,
that was a very you didn't get into it.
I mean, it had parts that were cool. Who I'd love to see more work by that creator, but the clashing of different styles and stuff was very
It went full on anime, eh?
Yeah. Not really my cup of tea.
No. I enjoyed it. I thought it was very cool. I did like that portrayal of Death. How he was it was almost like he was a spirit that would just, you kill him and then he just goes into another body and becomes Judge Death again.
Yeah, that's the problem with Judge Death. He's just uncontrollable. That's why Anderson had to trap him inside herself. She had to be voluntarily possessed by him and have the strength to resist him 24/7, which is no mean feat. So I can imagine she'd be much more powerful psychic if she wasn't containing the spirit of death, which could easily wipe out Megacity for sure.
So I guess some major storylines from the comics you mentioned already, the Judge Child saga.
Yep. Let's see.
The Apocalypse War.
There's, of course, the ABC Warriors who show up in the first Dredd movie. You see one of the ABC Warriors show up. It's a very dumbed down version of what an ABC Warrior is. So imagine when Rico picks up the ABC Warrior from the secondhand store and he says, "Oh, has it been decommissioned?" He says, yeah, it's perfectly safe. And then he just hot wires it and it gets up again. Imagine that robot's entire memory has been wiped and most of their operating systems have been taken away. That's what you got left over that he's using as a bodyguard. Very basic functionality, but the actual ABC Warrior robot is a fully sentient or sapient machine person. And the Cursed Earth and mostly Off-World has got a whole bunch of these decommissioned war robots that is designed for chemical, and nuclear, and biological warfare. That's what ABC stands for. And they've been outlawed. Fighting robots have been outlawed because they get pleasure from killing people. That sets off their thrill circuits as being in the middle of battle, shooting a whole bunch of humans. So they're problematic. and they shouldn't be around. But yeah, ABC Warriors is a great comic, and
Yeah.
it always has been some of
So
my most memorable
obviously,
stuff.
I think the Apocalypse War is considered like the definitive Dredd storyline. It's really, I've never fully read it. It's something that's on my list. The Cursed Earth one. Do you remember? Did you ever read the Cursed Earth saga?
No, I've read bits of it. Like it's these days you can get a whole record of things, but back in the day it would be like one magazine here, one magazine there, a couple of magazines with like two linked together storylines, but otherwise you just have to basically guess and then go to Wikipedia's or go to online forums and find out what's going
I think
on.
they've released all the Dredd comics now in what they call case files,
Yeah.
where it's all in chronological order that it was released, sort of thing.
Yeah.
But it's like 45 issues. They're all about 400 pages.
Yeah.
So it's a lot to get through. But like you say, one story arc would start in one issue and then not continue again until like years later.
Yeah. The cool thing about those big collections is like, unlike a graphic novel, where each page is like telling a bit of a scene, and by the end of it you've covered like 24 hours of that hero's life or whatever. You read through the case files of a Judge Dredd magazine, and it's like every page has got like half a, it's packed. Every page is packed because they're just putting as much as possible info in there for that week. And then next week they've added more, and next week they've got a new artist and a new guy coming in. And so it's just like full on all the time. So you can get through like 10 pages and you're like, man, break. Put down this thing and integrate this information.
Bang for your buck, man.
Yeah.
Bang for your buck. Yeah, I remember the Cursed Earth had like when he was in the Cursed Earth, there were gangs, and they were obviously like parodies of famous American icons like Ronald McDonald, Colonel Sanders.
Yep, you've even got a Bill Clinton type guy who is President Clinton. So yeah.
So it was like Mad Max, but except one of the drivers is Ronald McDonald.
Yeah. And it's like full on all through the comic. It's full on parody of the latest dystopian situation that we find ourselves in. Like I say, there's that punk rock element.
A famous one that both you and me have mentioned, and we both obviously like, is the Umpty Candy storyline.
Yeah.
Which was basically, like we said, sugar is illegal.
Yeah.
So it's basically Judge Dredd busting a sugar empire.
Yeah.
Well, as a kid, it was kind of cool because you're reading it and you're eating sugar. So you kind of felt like, oh, Judge Dredd would probably, I'd be going on the ISO cube now.
Yeah. So I'll read you the little wiki page thingy they've got on Umpty. Uncle Ump's Umpty Candy was a confectionery sold in Mega City 1, which became known as the sweet that was too good to eat. Although it was not a narcotic drug, it was illegal and not as addictive per se, but it tasted so good it was impossible to stop eating it once tasted. People who tried it gave up experienced severe food withdrawal symptoms. This problem became so acute that the judges banned Umpty Candy, arrested Ump, and faked his death, pretending that the secret recipe had died with him. However, a corrupt judge ensured that the secret got out, and the black market Umpty was soon being sold illicitly by criminals known as Umpty baggers. So it just takes the idea of like, maybe we should put a tax on sugar, and it's just like throws it to the absolute extreme. Make sugar illegal.
Yeah, I mean, this is why 2000 AD is so brilliant, because it's so ahead of its time. I mean, things like this weren't addressed really publicly till I'm just having a look. When did that film Super Size Me come out?
Oh, that was
2004.
Oh, 2004.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was so ahead of its time in terms of addressing these obesity, sugar is addictive, caffeine is addictive. These are going to be problems in the future. That, actually, since then we grown up there in the 80s, we never knew. I mean, that came out, I believe that storyline came out around 80, in the mid 80s.
Yeah, you can imagine our surprise when we got to the future and it turned out to be just as dystopian as the shit we were reading about in comics.
Yeah.
Like, did we do this? I don't think we did this. I think we were trying to avoid this. something's gone wrong here. The wheels have come off.
Another favorite of mine is one that I absolutely adored was the crossover they did with Batman.
Oh yeah,
Judgment on Gotham.
Yeah,
which is
which was perfectly legit for the setting because we already had like extra dimensional judges and psychics and all that sort of supernatural shit going on. So yeah,
there was quite a few, like back in the 90s, crossovers were massive. There were so many different comic book crossovers.
Yeah.
And Judge Dredd had a lot. I think he did Aliens. I think he did Predator. Not sure if Spawn became a crossover. More than likely, I'd have to have a look at that. But yeah, Batman. I believe Batman had three crossover books.
Yeah.
Simon
Bisley drawing Batman and
Simon Bisley's Batman. I love that color palette. That's my favorite Batman. That gray and that blue cape.
Where the costume is in. How to describe Bisley's work?
Everything's accentuated.
Yeah.
Like,
so in Bisley's,
his ears are pointed.
Yeah.
His
so
ears are
picture
really...
Batman is this brutal, like super muscular, like hard as nails figure, and he's got this fabric draped on him, and then accentuated with the ears and that sort of stuff. And
imagine Arnold Schwarzenegger in his pumping iron sort of physique, wearing Adam West's Batman costume.
Yeah.
And
that's Bisley's art. Plus super stylized with like big, hobnail boots and
everything's bigger. Like his cape is bigger, his ears are more pointier.
Mm-hmm. And when he punches the guy, there's a mist of exploding blood, and you can guarantee all of the organs involved are going to be splayed out across.
I'm sure we'll talk about Batman at one point. But there was this point, around 89 where, when we were kids, Batman was a bit of a joke character.
Yeah.
Not to go off topic. We only really knew Batman from the TV show.
Yeah, it was camp. It was a camp.
It was camp.
Yeah.
And then in the late 80s, early 90s, Batman took a hard left turn.
Very hard. Yeah.
And it was fucking great.
And we were like, I didn't know that this could happen. Yeah. But I mean, but so it was.
And that's kind of lined up with Dredd, because Dredd was already in that zone. Dredd had been doing that ultra violence that Batman soon became.
Yeah, like if you think about the Mortal Kombat games that you have, and you're like, oh man, remember when they introduced the bits where you would punch the person and it would do it like an X-ray view of their like bones and some vertebrae? Judge Dredd was drawing that back in the 80s. Like that was our experience of Judge Dredd. It was like ultra violence just was normal in there. Which is not to glorify it overly much, but it was awesome because it was just like nothing else was doing it. Like I say, you got the Comics Code Authority where you couldn't have blood shown in a Marvel comic sort of thing for a while. And then they sort of rebelled against it, but not really hugely.
Do you think Dredd got away with it because it wasn't inked?
Yes. I think they got away with it because it was just a different culture, because it was England. Like England always had that like war story comics and stuff. So I think they came from a tradition which was fundamentally different from the American comic tradition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Like,
do you have any favorite Dredd comics?
Oh, kind of like they're in the rosy mythical part of my mind where I'm not sure whether I'm remembering them completely correctly. And remember, they're all out of sync. But like there was,
we didn't have subscriptions back then, kids. Like we were lucky. Like
a friend who had a box full of them, or you found one or two, or there was one at a newsagent. Yeah.
My dad loved to have a bit of a flutter on the racehorses. So I spent a lot of my childhood sitting in the back of a car outside of TAB, and if I was good, I'd get a comic and a bag of chips, crisps, I guess, or whatever you want to call them.
Yeah.
So so I'd always go for 2000 AD, and it might have been like 10 issues since I last read one. Or occasionally you might go to a secondhand store and find a box of them, like real cheap, and just get them. And they would not be in any consistent order.
No. And quite often there were storylines in there which I just didn't follow, like the Button Men thing storyline. Like I didn't really read those. I just skipped over them and went to my titles that I liked the most. Whenever there was Slain involved, oh man. Part of my ambition is to buy every single like Slain graphic novel that I can get my hands on because they're just so good.
DR and Quinch, they really appeal to my juvenile humor of my brain because they were essentially like, you know, those type of comics. As you gotten older and you go back and you look and you go, oh, they're a bit stupid, really.
Yeah. They're very very topical, like the Ace.
Lobo's another one like that, you know.
Where do we even begin with Lobo?
We're gonna do Lobo.
Yeah. My favorite was Ace Space Scarp. So Ace Space Truckers, right? So it was very much the time when CB radio was very much the go, the jargon of CB radio, and you can see that reflected in Dungeons and Dragons with the Thieves' Cant and Spelljammer and Planescape logos, jargon that they use. So that was very much like, oh yeah, this is a product of the 80s. I can tell immediately.
Being a trucker was a cool job back then.
Yeah. So there was that, and so they had all their trucker speak jargon.
What? Alien is space truckers.
Yeah, is it another bug hunt? Yeah. Oh, so funny.
Anyway, sorry. Get you off topic.
Oh, yeah. It's funny. There's a lot of the actors and stuff who made those classic movies like RoboCop and Starship Troopers and Aliens and stuff coming forward and saying, I almost didn't get cast for this movie. It would have been this person. You're like, you try and imagine the movie with somebody else running it. It would have been so different. Michael Bain in there as Ripley's love interest was like the last minute. They literally brought him in when they already started filming. So he just sort of showed up on set. But they had another actor who you would recognize from various other things who was going to be like her major love interest and had a much bigger part in the story. But he
I'll let you. I'm going to take a quick. I need to go to the toilet. Right. I've had three copies. Have a quick think about any Dredd comics.
Sure.
I'll be 5 minutes, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, to give you some idea of, so they call the different magazines progs or megs. So from prog 2 to prog 60 was 1977 to 1978, and there's like 20 different storylines at least, maybe 30. The Ape Gang, Mega City 5000, Luna 1, Showdown on Luna 1, Oxygen Desert, first Lunar Olympics. So there was a lot of off-world stuff close to home. These have all been reprinted by Rebellion, which has bought Judge Dredd comics now. Cursed Earth, Prog 61 to Prog 85. So that was quite a long one.
Yeah, the Cursed Earth. Sorry, I'm back. The Cursed Earth was definitely a major one. So I asked old Chat GBT for iconic ones. And a lot of these I haven't read. America seems to be a very popular one, which was written by John Wagner.
Day the Lord Died.
Yeah, The Day the Lord Died. One called Origins, which I guess is it's issue 1505, so it's definitely not an early comic, but I think it goes back about, it readdresses Dredd's origins, so maybe that's where you missed the whole Rico.
Yeah, probably.
Fargo.
Judge Death begins, let's see, that's Prog 149 to run 151, but he's a reoccurring thing.
Necropolis, which is a big Judge Death storyline with his Dark Judges. Judge Death and his Dark Judges launch a supernatural assault on Mega City 1.
Right. 1980-81, that was the Judge Child from Prog 156 to Prog 181, so quite a long, big storyline there. These are all collected in the Case Files books as well.
That's Brian Bolland as well.
Yeah.
John Wagner, he's prolific, man. He has been the main writer on this guy for years. It really is his baby.
It really is.
Garth Ennis did a run. So kids, you might know Garth Ennis from The Boys.
Yep.
He is The Boys boy.
Oh, one of the interesting things on sorry. the mega city blocks, the big towers, the archaeology towers where everybody lives, they're quite often named after famous people. So you'll have Charles Darwin, or Billy D. Williams, or Michael Jackson.
Some of them have aged better than others.
Some of them,
maybe.
yeah. The Ronald Reagan block.
Oh, that would be living in Bill Cosby block.
Yeah.
Anymore.
So part of the storyline, and you see this in the first Dredd movie, is block war, where two blocks go at it like a military war between the two blocks, and the judges step in to basically put down anybody who's holding a gun.
Oh, we'll move into the movies. Eh?
Yeah.
So obviously, Dredd, as any icon gets huge, they become just more than just their comic book origins, and they branch out into different things. So we'll dive a little bit into, obviously, part of why Dredd is so prolific is he's adapted. Obviously, we've got
he's the original Mandalorian. Never takes his helmet off.
We're going to get into that right now. So 1995, we finally got the Judge Dredd movie. But I think before we mention that, in 1989, we got what I consider to be probably a more accurate portrayal of Dredd was RoboCop.
Mm.
The RoboCop movie came out 6 years before. That little fact, that was my first ever R18 film I ever got into underage. And that film, I think that film determined a lot of my personality came from. I've never seen a film like that at the cinema before with a crowd, being underage. And I came out, and I immediately recognized RoboCop as Dredd. This is the Dredd film I wanted to see. We had to wait another 6 years. 2000 AD was in a bit of a slump at that time, and they decided to cash in their most iconic character. And Stallone, was Stallone peak Stallone then? There's Cliffhanger, Demolition Man. Was that around that era?
Yeah.
So it was budget. I'm going to give you some budgets. So estimated budget for, I don't know how films make this, all just sounds like ridiculous amounts of money to me, but 90 to 100 million was the cost. This is US dollars.
Wow.
And it apparently made 113 million worldwide. It currently has a critic score on Rotten Tomatoes of 18% and an audience score of 31. I think it's
generous.
I think it's become a so bad it's good kind of iconic.
I've been guilty of saying eat recycled food. It's okay. It's good for the environment and okay for you. That's one of the things which is in my lexicon of sayings. So yeah, the question of whether Rob Schneider should have been in that movie or not is a yes for me.
Oh, I mean, there's so much. It really, Dredd's costume was very flamboyant.
Yeah.
The shoulder pads were very big.
You know what? Who I think should have been in there rather than Rob Schneider? Bill Burr. Bill Burr would have been a much better perp. Fuck this. Why am I here? Fucking this is such injustice. He would have been great.
Basically, his character from The Mandalorian is what you're saying.
Yeah, he should have been in there. He should have been in there. He's the right tone for that whole thing. It's like, hallelujah, praise it on the mountain. But it's like, don't team up with them. They're cannibals. Fuck.
So I got a little bit of trivia. So apparently during production, Stallone reportedly found that the Judge Dredd costume and helmet was so uncomfortable that he would just rip the helmet off as soon as the cameras stopped rolling. And that apparently led to delays in the filming. Obviously, the film faced a lot of criticism from departing from, a lot of the gritty and satirical tone of the comics. Mm-hmm. Stallone just completely clashed with the filmmakers over the direction of the character. Wagner and Isquero were initially consulted, but they weren't paid, so they refused to have anything to do with it. And it's kind of now become, I guess, would you say it's a cult classic?
Yeah.
Just due to its campy charm.
Kind of like the first Hulk movie. the Ang Lee Hulk
We
movie. You can barely even find it these
yeah
days, but it's still a cult classic.
yeah. So obviously we had Stallone as Judge Dredd. We had Ahmad Asante was meant to be his twin brother Rico. Um, I didn't know much about Ahmad Asante back then. I know he did a film. I think he did a film with Antonio Banderas that I remember. Um, Diana Lane as Judge Hershey. Rob Schneider as the kind of comic relief. Yeah, and I guess it told the story. The main thing we all have a problem with was he didn't keep the helmet on.
Yeah, he just was a bad Dredd. Yeah, and it's all about ego.
He doesn't.
It's all about his ego.
His eye. He does do a kind of icon. What did you think of his "I am law"? I am the law delivery.
I mean, he first of all, he tried to make the character comedic. Like he was like, I knew you'd say that. He was trying to make that his like I'll be back thing.
I think there was a lot of pressure in the '90s for action stars to have catchphrases.
Yeah, and it was like just another Stallone movie where he was in a sci-fi setting, and he was very much making it a Stallone movie and not I'm playing a character that's iconic sort of thing. Which is the annoying thing. Like if they wanted to, he could have just made his own sci-fi movie and not used Judge Dredd as a vehicle.
Do you know this little Stallone Schwarzenegger fact? So do you know that Arnie trolled Stallone into doing "Stop or My Mum Will Shoot"?
Oh yeah. I know full well that they were very much in yeah.
So Arnold got offered the script for that and recognized it straight away as being a shit film. So he basically trolled and started rumors that he was going to do it, and so Stallone accepted it because he thought if he wasn't going to take it, Arnie was going to take it. Arnie was on a massive roll at the time. And Stallone was, I'd say, Arnie's second fiddle at the box office. And yeah, he basically trolled him into accepting this film to sink his career.
Stallone typically made more money per movie than Schwarzenegger did. But Schwarzenegger was just like, I mean,
he's clever. He
is really clever. He's got that whole. He's got a Viking sense of humor. Where it's, he's cunning in a devious way. And yeah, he just rings around Stallone, but Stallone was making more money hand over fist than Schwarzenegger was, and it came down to like how much was the body count of how many characters your guy killed in the last movie, sort of thing. So that was kind of how they approached their roles. So it was not surprising that Stallone didn't really give Dredd the respect that he was due. But Urban, on the other hand, very different killer fish.
Yeah, so let's move into this one. So yeah, obviously we had to wait a long time. 2012, we got Dredd.
Yeah, my level of excitement when I saw Carl Urban for the first time in a Dredd outfit, and I was fizzing, man. I was just like, oh, what's this? And I was like, do you not know about Judge Dredd? You're like,
Carl.
It's like, oh, that's
Carl Urban. Carl Urban collects like iconic characters and franchises. Like, he's got so many now.
Yeah. I bet he'd love to do another Dredd movie, honestly.
Oh, he'd be great as a Punisher. So, yeah, this film was not financially successful though.
No, unfortunately, it came out at a bad time. It had a lot of competition. Their releasing and their advertising for it was just shithouse. And yeah, it basically got killed before it.
It was on that 3D bandwagon as well, because I always thought his name was Dredd 3D. I think everything about it was 3D. That whole slow-mo effect was designed for but it was fucking good 3D. Did you see it at the cinema? Yep. I never saw it at the cinema. Yep. In 3D?
Yep. It wasn't like glaring in your face, like very obviously 3D.
No, it's not like, it wasn't like, oh, I've got a ping pong ball pattern.
Yeah, it was more like just like here's a visually amazing sequence where the person's perspective is slowed down, and you're seeing ultra violence. Like you're seeing the bullet go through someone this fast, and like it's ultra violent, but it's also incredibly beautiful. And the depth of field provided by the 3D experience just added to that. So it really was a trippy experience for a person who was having a trip. and it was played into the whole horrific aspect of it to like this person is stretching out their moments, and it's their last moments, and they're incredibly violent. So it just sort of all of that hits you at the same time. It's just like
it portrayed the drug as, you know, the slow-mo. That's what it lent into.
Yeah,
it? So,
yeah.
So some facts on this one. So budget, 45 million. Obviously, what was the budget for the other one? 100 million. And we're talking
because they avoided the whole flying bikes and doing the whole backdrop scenery of Mega City 1 being a super futuristic place. It was more, this is future Cape Town sort of look vibe to it.
But it's lost money. It only made 41 million.
Yeah.
Critics score of 79% and a audience score of 87. I think that's correct. So it was a much smaller, concise.
Yeah.
It was a Tuesday. This film was basically a Tuesday for Dredd.
Yeah. It's like, from a box office perspective, you can see that if the movie had been marketed correctly, if it had reached the audiences, it would have been a big box office smash. But something was going on. You can tell by the numbers there. Something was going on in the background that really, some bunch of executives just shot this in the foot for whatever reason. They do things always because they're scared about their reputations and not being able to get another budget movie. So if they ever see any sort of, it's like a perceived weakness stock market thing.
Well, do you think America just doesn't get Dredd?
No, I think we were ready for that Dredd. I just think that the film industry in the States has got this terrible problem where they give creative control to non-creative people, and those creative and those non-creative people only see dollar signs, and and they get scared and they bury stuff. They try and kill projects.
I mean,
which
this
they have
had
no
some
right
talented people. This had some talented people involved. So first off, Alex Garland. So he's credited as the writer, but Carl Urban's basically come out and said he was highly involved in the direction of the film, more than a writer. I think Pete Travis is credited as the director. So for those that don't know, Alex Garland is he's a famous screenwriter and director. So he's probably most famous. He did a lot of stuff with gosh, I've gone blank. Who's the guy that did Trainspotting? Danny Boyle. So he did 28 Days Later, 28 Weeks Later, Sunshine, The Beach. He started off as an author.
Oh, he did The Beach. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, The Beach is his first book. And Danny Boyle and him built a relationship. He went on to do some screenwriting for Danny Boyle. So obviously 28 Days Later is highly influenced by 2018. Sunshine, which I think is a really underrated film, is pretty much, you know,
our man Cliff Curtis.
Space Odyssey. Yeah, Cliff Curtis. And then Dredd was his first sort of go at sort of directing, I guess, but he was only credited as a writer. He went on to do one of my all-time favorite sci-fi films, which I think if you haven't seen this film, go watch it immediately, called Ex Machina. A fucking fantastic film. Absolutely fucking fantastic.
Agreed.
He also did one with Natalie Portman, which went straight to Netflix, called Alienation, where a bunch of scientists go into a... Have you seen that one?
What do they do?
I think it's...
What do the scientists do?
They go... There's basically a big portal appears, and they go in there to investigate what's going on. I don't want to spoil it. It's one of those films, the less you know, the better. And he also did recently has got a film out called Civil War, which is I haven't got around to seeing yet. He's a very check out his discography, man. He's a very prolific sci-fi writer. He's always doing stuff slightly left of field. You know, it doesn't always work, but yeah, he obviously decided to take a more grittier. I don't know whether it was because they had budget restrictions, but obviously they decided to take a more sort of, you know, a more intimate version of Dredd and just tell a day in Dredd's life. It's basically started off as a drug bust. They follow some perps back to a sick block, get locked in there.
Yeah, you could call the movie Anderson's First Day.
Yeah, training day for Anderson. Obviously we've got Lena Headey. I think I'm saying her name right. as Mama. She's obviously, Game of Thrones time. I love the fact she's still like, she's obviously got some popularity now, and she's still leaning into that femme fatale
Oh
role,
yeah,
but
very much so. Yeah, she does
not in that kind of sexy way.
No. She's very much damaged goods, like the most damaged goods. So she's a gang boss in an ultraviolet city of the future, where she's manufacturing drugs and takes on the law. Like, she is the law inside her building, and then she takes on the law from outside of her building, which is in the form of Judge Dredd. And
Yep.
she brings everything to bear against him.
And Dredd seems, it seems very early on in Dredd's
Yeah.
career, this film, to me. Like, he doesn't seem famous. Like, the perps aren't scared of him.
No.
The cop seems, the other judges know who he is.
You see nothing of the halls of justice. You see nothing of the chief justice or anything like that. He's just a cog. He's just a street cop.
Yeah. And his uniform it's nowhere near as flamboyant as Stallone's. It's definitely got a more riot cop
It's believable
type feel to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. You actually think that he might? I actually thought he could die in this film at some point. Like, I actually did get a sense of he could get fucked up or badly injured in this film. He has this cold, logical, like, he goes into the situation and shit goes down, and he just approaches it in this, like, methodical, never wavering from the law.
It never occurred to him to, like, back off or to get out of there, or it was just inexorably press forward. Like, And then there's just parts in it that lead to his character as well. Like, there's a bunch of, obviously, Mama puts a price on his head, so the whole block is after him. He's got a bounty, and some young kids decide to take a pop at him. And there is a bit there where he moves the lawgiver to a stun mode. And that just little things like that just say so much about his character. But also there's all the, like, Judge Anderson she's infiltrating that house, and she knows this guy and who so she gets in there, and then she realizes, they've already killed her husband, and stuff. So there's and also she reserved judgment to not kill somebody. And then Dredd is questioning her because what she's doing is technically against the rules, because their rules are so draconic and locked in. And she's like, no, there's subtlety here. And he's like,
because at the end, she's like, I failed. Who gives a fuck? I failed. I'm not going to be a judge.
Yeah. But he's like, you bring something to the table that we like is an experiment. Like, I didn't realize what your talent could bring. So this was like, Dredd was finding out whether a psychic cop could actually work. And it turns out it can. Yeah.
I think another thing that probably contributed to this film not doing so well is a few months earlier, another little Indonesian film came out called The Raid, or I think it was called The Raid Redemption. Almost beat for beat the same story. Not
much of a story in The Raid. It's just full-on action the entire way through. And Dredd is kind of like that too. It's full-on action the entire way through. The story develops.
Fighting their way through a tower block to get to a bad guy at the roof. Essentially, obviously the raid was very brutal as well.
It was like Thai kickboxing type action.
Fantastic film. If you haven't seen Raid Redemption, absolutely.
There's another Raid movie that's come out.
Raid 2. Part 2 as well. So and there was talks, I think there was talks, like, because it got a bit of a cult following, there were talks of a TV show spinning out from this. I don't think it was going to be a Dredd show. I think it was going to be more of a Mega City 1 show. But I think I've never heard anything about that for years. It's
basically, if you want to make it these days, I mean, we're in New Zealand. We could go down to Wellington and make it if we wanted to.
Obviously, the fact that this film lost, pretty much.
We'll get a crate of beer. We'll head down in the car on a weekend and knock one out, eh? Me and you.
Yeah. Well, I've met Carl Urban. He's a nice guy. He signed my Doom. Remember, he was in Doom with The Rock.
Yep, Reaper. Yeah.
He signed my Doom HD DVD. He signed it as Spock, though. He wrote "You're out of your Vulcan mind" on it. So I don't know where that is. I don't even have an HD DVD player anymore.
Nice.
I just knew he was at a convention. I wanted to get something signed, and that was the only thing of his I had in my house at the time. So
Like,
I might have upset
just
him.
put your handprint on me and I'll just get it tattooed, mate. That'll be great.
Yeah.
I've met Timura Morrison. That's about the only famous. I've met a couple of other people. Haven't met a lot of movie stars.
So, yeah, obviously, big thumbs up for that film. If you've not seen the Dredd film, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah,
fuck, go see it, man. It's
a put on anytime movie. That's the sort of movie it is.
Yeah. Obviously, other things here Dredd's popped into is there's been a few video games. I've never played any of the Dredd video games.
I played a Rogue Trooper video game for quite a while. That was pretty good. There was the Dredd game suffered from the problem of they turn into.
Well, here's one. Show our age. Apparently, so I did a Wikipedia on this. So apparently, a game came out on 1990 on the ZX Spectrum, the Commodore 64, and the Amiga, which were right in our warehouse. I was a Commodore 64 boy. I know you were an Amiga boy.
Amstrad. I am an Amstrad.
Then 1993, a Dredd pinball machine came out.
Sounds about right. 1990s was big for a lot of pinball games. That was when the Addams Family and all those ones.
95, we got a side-scrolling action game based on the movie. That was apparently released on the Nintendo, Game Boy, and Sega Mega Drive, or Genesis as they called it in America. And then in 2003, we got a game called Dredd vs. Death, which was a first-person shooter. Apparently, that was released on PlayStation 2, Xbox, and the GameCube. I've not played any of those. Also, says some audio books, audio dramas got released based on a few famous 2000 AD comics, including Dredd. Interesting. Couple of notable voice actors involved in those is Joseph Fiennes portrayed Dredd in the audiobooks. And also, I can never pronounce his name, but he's got a fantastic voice. He was the Tick. Peter Swearenvenitz.
Yep, that guy.
Yep, that guy. Yeah, he was involved as well. And then obviously we got, near and dear to our hearts, some role-playing games and some miniature games.
Yeah.
That you would know a lot more about than me.
Yeah. Let's see. The most latest game is a mobile game called Judge Dredd Crime Files that came out in 2019. But there was also Judge Dredd versus Zombies mobile game that was around.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So let's see. Mongoose did a lot of role-playing games for the 2018 franchise. I printed out the Mongoose Strontium Dog one because I thought that had more role-playing opportunities because you're basically galactic bounty hunters. So you can travel around and stuff. You're not just stuck with Mega City 1 and Curse.
Apparently Games Workshop released something in 82.
It's like I like the Mongoose stuff, but I don't like it at the same time. I don't really like the rule system. It's all D6 based things.
Is it a miniature game?
No, not really. I never played it like that. I think you could, but it'd be difficult. Anything with like modern ranged warfare guns and stuff like that, unless it's a war game based thing, it's kind of difficult. Like, yeah, I wish that Games Workshop bought, bought the arm off. But I imagine that Rebellion could probably put out a role playing game pretty well. The guy who runs, can we talk about the CEO of Rebellion?
Yeah, go for it, man.
So this guy is...
We're pretty much worked his way through all my topics.
Yeah,
anyway.
So this guy, Kingsley, he rides around on a war horse, dressed up as a medieval knight, jousting.
This is a guy that looks like Henry Cavill.
Yes, he looks like Henry Cavill's brother. He looks like Costco Henry Cavill.
Even talks like Henry Cavill.
He talks like he's like Walmart Henry Cavill. But he literally dresses up like a knight in shining armor, and he has like videos on YouTube about like medieval life and stuff. He's an expert on that sort of stuff, and he just happens to own the company that owns Judge Dredd in 2000 AD. So he's so fucking cool, like from a nerd perspective.
2000 AD comic is in really good hands now.
Yeah,
I have
it's
to
run
say,
by an absolute, like, he's absolutely dedicated to it.
Yeah.
He's got the right attitude. So yeah, who knows what we'll see? And we live now in an age where indie role playing games and stuff are popping up everywhere. Not since the early '90s have we seen such a proliferation of the market, which has been really great. It almost thank Wizard of the Coast for screwing the pooch so much. So there isn't a 5th edition version of Judge Dredd as far as I know, but there could easily be. You got all the ingredients to do it. You got
there's so much lore, isn't there?
I mean, anything high tech can be handled with spells, and guns and stuff are already in the 5th edition. They've been in there since the first. I mean, they're in the Dungeon Master's Guide, so you can put guns in any campaign. And the latest stuff that they put out, the Expedition to Barrier Peaks revamp that they put in for the latest upcoming Greyhawk revised 5th edition. It's got laser guns.
Infinite Staircase.
Yeah, it's got laser guns and stuff in there. So, you can do sci-fi future city stuff with 5th edition rules if you want to. Some will argue that it's not the tradition, it's not the flavor that Dungeons and Dragons is supposed to have. It's like, it's 5th edition, man. It's designed to be generic and applicable to every genre. Master of none, they say. Anyway,
make a ruling, add a modifier, roll a d20.
Yeah. But Judge Dredd is one of those things where what you need for a role-playing game is lots and lots of easily digestible lore that establish the setting in your mind as a role-playing guy so that you can craft stories and then explain it to the person sitting across the table so that they're living there in their mind. That's the fundamental thing that you want from a role-playing game. The system itself doesn't really matter that much, but providing a resource where these things are explained to you like as you go and learn the game, you learn about the setting and stuff, I think is what you need. So you start off at a training academy. There was one recent game which was pretty good, but you kind of locked into playing a judge and you can't play anything else sort of thing. So what it needs is...
Because I guess otherwise you would encourage PvP, wouldn't you?
Yeah. And that would be okay. So like playing a judge who's gone off the rails and turned psycho is like a main storyline of a lot of different things. Is like the pressure of being a judge and the fact that there's no accountability for these people gets to them and they turn into psychopathic killers and they get put down by another judge. Quite often it's Dredd or somebody else. Dredd himself is not a normal thinking human being for sure. But yeah, and then like with a role-playing game, you've got the idea of you can incorporate all the different things from 2000 AD that are all tied together. So you can go to the Cursed Earth, you can go off to Lunar Colony 1, you can, go across space and encounter Nemesis the Warlock or whatever if you go through a time tunnel, or you can go back in time with Stromty Dog where he first meets, the Viking that ends up being his buddy. There's aliens like Gronk, and there's aliens like the Crags underneath Mega City 1, these like shark-like alien people, all sorts of stuff. So it's almost like you're spoiled with too much lore, too much weight of years and years of comics. If you try and incorporate all of it at once, you get this massive omnibus that the DM is just like, am I supposed to know all this to run a game? Right out, I'm not going to play that. But yeah, if you just introduce bits and pieces and then you've got expansion, then it would work. Yeah. Okay. It's tricky. It would be...
always running an urban campaign is always hard.
I would say it's actually better suited to be a collectible card game than it is a role-playing game in some ways. Because if you look at Magic the Gathering, all of those card sets that they have to keep putting out to keep the game rolling over is exactly the sort of resources that Judge Dredd has to bear. Plus, it makes sense that you would equip your character. You'd have like an iconic, okay, here's my hero for the match. It's Judge Dredd. And he's got certain abilities that he can apply to these mechs and street youths and punks and mutants and crime situations and alerts and special forces and all these things that I can, ABC Warrior robots that I've reserved. It's got all these different factions. Yeah, you could easily do a collectible card game that way.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah, you could have your Judge Death Commander deck, your Judge Dredd Commander deck, your Judge Anderson Commander deck. Yeah. Well, they've done it with Fallout, so obviously I even think things like Fallout was an influence. I mean, there's so much dystopian stuff now that we just consider to be cliche that I think Dredd and 2000 AD established in our brain to make it cliche.
Mm. Yeah, the cursed earth. The
Um,
idea of like having a nuclear bomb blasted world that you will be
yeah,
rebuilding on, in spite of itself. Yeah.
yeah. I mean,
Like the ocean, for instance, like the Atlantic Ocean in 2000 AD's Earth is the Black Atlantic. It's a lifeless, dead place that the only life that you find there is artificially produced algae farms, and other than that, there might be
mm,
the occasional mutant shark, but the whole world is dead. Like
yeah, it's a big
mm.
country. So yeah, I guess why is Judge Dredd iconic? I guess why this longevity and consistency, and it's why is he stuck around?
Because it is so punk rock, because it had no rules, because it was a niche that has to exist, almost in spite of itself. Um, it was never mainstream. It was always seen as
It was social
it was
commentary,
yeah,
and
it was social commentary,
it
but
was
without
with violence and
yeah.
satire.
These days, the social commentary is shoved in your face. Like you have no choice but to like woke message, and it's like, oh god, why have you ruined this
Yeah,
franchise? You
yeah,
know,
yeah,
Judge Dredd was not like that. The social commentary was satire, proper satire. So it was
yeah,
implied in everything that you're reading. Like you read this, and it's like, oh man, that was a bit on the nose. And it's like, yeah, but it had to
yeah,
be. And it's hard to describe how oppressive and depressing Thatcherite Britain was. That and leave like New Zealand was much more British back then, for instance.
yeah.
So
Definitely,
we were much
definitely.
more influenced by British culture back in those days. Even like the news presenters had to speak in a British accent rather than a Kiwi accent.
Mm.
Um, and so Thatcherite Britain was like super repressive, super like anti-union.
We were part of the Commonwealth, so like
Falklands War
even
happened, and
even our TV, like we only had so much original TV that everything
yeah,
was BBC. BBC
yeah.
programs.
We never
Are
got
you
like
being
music videos. We just got the music. We didn't get
the game
yeah.
shows? The game shows were all British. Are you being? The comedies were
Thank God
British.
the comedy was British.
Yeah, which I think, no offense to American, but comedy is
Yeah.
English.
No offense implied, but you can
No
be
one
offended
didn't.
if you want to. But like, there is a
Yeah,
reason why you keep stealing the ideas for British shows and turning them into American shows, The Office, etc.
and I think his look, his look is
Mm.
timeless.
Yeah, there's that
Um,
Mandalorian thing to it as well. Like the reason why the Mandalorian is so cool is he never takes his helmet off. This is the way. It was inherently cool. Like it took John Favreau to come along and say, "Look, Star Wars is cool. Like it can be.
yeah,
There's some really cool aspects to it. It's not all like Jedi and lightsabers and airy fairy, hoogie woogie mythologies and stuff. There's actually cool bounty hunters and stuff. And Judge Dredd is a lone operator, bounty hunter for the state, who gets into hairy situations and has nobody to back him up but himself and his bike and his gun. And when he gets hurt, he gets hurt.
I think we're going to be covering a lot of these iconic characters are going to be these very like stoic, manly, you know, these Wolverines,
Mm.
these Lobos, these Punishers, Hellboys. They're all these, fuck, I'm a guy, man. That's what I like. That's my hero.
And I mean, don't blame
Um,
us that a lot of the iconic stuff that we grew up with was very chauvinistic and male centered. It's because who was spending money on it? Guys were.
yeah, exactly.
And our culture was very, our society was divided up into males and females. It was very, very different social tracks, So even if a girl
Yeah,
was interested in comics, she had no way to approach the guys who were keen on it because we just had no language to talk to them. It would have been like, really? And she would have to, it wasn't even a matter of like proving to the guys that I can do it. That wasn't even a factor. It was just crossing over into guy interest territory was socially stigmatized by women, not men. So girls being interested in guy stuff was policed by girls, not guys. And that's a narrative that I think the youth of today needs to understand. It's like, we had no choice in the matter. We would have loved to have been role-playing with girls. We would have loved to have been reading comics in our rooms on the weekend. Come on. If we could have been involving teenage girls in everything that we did, we sure as hell would have. But they just were not interested at all.
My parents sent me to a co-ed school because I didn't know how to communicate with women. They were worried. That was the whole reason.
Yeah, I was the exact opposite. We were in a Mercury Bay was an area school with like 500 kids in the schools from juniors all the way up to leaving school to go to university. So it was like the entirety of our culture was in there. But you tended to have a group that were the same age and went through the entirety of school together. So that was kind of weird that we didn't get split up to go to high school or anything like that. It was just like all the way through. And I came in at standard 4 to that school, and I still felt like I'd missed out because I wasn't like a toddler with these people. So yeah,
standard 4.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've not got much else on Dredd really. I don't have any. You got any sort of closing thoughts?
I think it's going to endure for a very long time yet, as long as we're alive, for sure. It will never not be cool. It will never be replicated by anything that modern kids these days would come up with, because they just don't have. They're living in a dystopian world, but they don't know how to write about it. Because
just give them another. My thoughts is just give them another chance, man. Give Carl Urban another go.
Yeah,
make a show, do a series. Like obviously, we know that TV works now. You got enough material to play with, and go geeky with it, man. Go Judge Dredd, go Supernatural.
That's it.
Yeah, this is
that's the elements of that we haven't seen yet. I think with Judge Dredd, we haven't seen the supernatural aspect of it, and it's always been there. We haven't seen the crossovers between different universes, even like just if in a Marvel movie coming up, there was some like real brief crossover where they pass through a megacity type scene, and it's Judge Dredd who's like gunning at a predator who's leaping across some rooftops, and that's all you see. Just a bleep. That's it. That would be fantastic. That would be fan service. That would make me so happy.
Well, apparently the new Avengers film has got 66 Marvel characters or something fucking ridiculous. I mean, that's just too many.
Have they got Wonder Man? I'm not going to be happy until I've got Wolverine and until I've got Colossus and Wonder Man and
I'm going to wait and see what you do with my precious Doctor Doom.
They really don't know what to do with Doctor Doom at all.
No, I don't really have anything else on me. Read some Dredd. Go see. If you haven't seen the 2012 film, definitely seek that out.
You can buy big omnibus collections and CD and stick drive of all the old progs of Judge Dredd from I think it's like not Amazon, the other one.
If you have a Spotify premium account as well, I know all the audio dramas seem to be up there for free.
Yep.
As well, and they go through quite a few of their iconic storylines. I think the Apocalypse War is up there. I think Judge Child is up there. Judge Death's storyline. They're all dramatized as well, and they're only a couple of hours long. I think they're not big things.
Well, let's not forget that Judge Dredd is not a hero. He's a villainous character too. Like he nuked a bunch of people at one point.
He's an arsehole. He can be an arsehole.
And he is merciless. He is the law, literally the law. So he's an unfeeling, uncaring individual who will gun somebody down for their infractions, and he can't let it go. Even when he's in the Cursed Earth, and really the wise thing to do is just like pull your head in and get back to Mega City 1. He still goes after criminals and stuff like
that. I've got nothing else to add. So I guess that's pretty much our first episode. Wizards and Warp Drives. What are we going to do next week?
Well, we would be remiss if we
Have
don't
a-
talk about all the new stuff which is coming for Dungeons and Dragons at some point. Like on my
Yeah,
Discord server, for instance, I've created Team Toad. Team Toad is the people who are like
going nuts. I'm too scared. I just released like a picture on there, and then it just
yeah
I go back and check it, and there's like 45 comments later, and I'm like, okay,
yeah. It's different when it's your own server and you can just say, hey, everybody, by the way, as I've made it, I've said this many times. I always play the current edition of Dungeons and Dragons. It doesn't matter what edition it is. I've played through 4th edition onto 5th edition, and when the new edition of D&D 24 or whatever they're calling it, I call it 24. I call it D&D 5R because it's revised 5th edition.
5.5.
Yeah, or the
5.5,
5th edition's rule cyclopedia is essentially what it is. They're just codifying all the changes and stuff that they've made in 5th edition and putting it into one succinct thing so that they can then use that for all their crossovers and stuff for whatever other franchises they're bringing into 5th edition. That's how I see it. Or they're codifying it so that it's like nice and milquetoast so they can make video games out of it, essentially. But
yeah, I think it'd be interesting to see how it's taken by a brand new fan, like someone, because this is my problem as well with a lot of these nerd things that people get up and anti about is it doesn't belong to you. It's not ours. We love it, and we are fans, and we are support it. And I know a lot of this comes from passion and stuff, but you got to remember, like, there's going to be people coming off Baldur's Gate 3, or this is going to be their first, edition, or their first time playing the game. And if it is a more like user friendly, if it gets more people playing the game, well, good on them. I don't know. I think we get too precious about things. Probably controversial, the Acolyte on Star Wars. I'm a massive Star Wars fan, and obviously that is, God, that is shitting all over the law. And I've got friends that are just absolutely like livid and toxic on it. I'm same time, I'm a dad. I have a 13-year-old and a 9-year-old. Girls as well. And I've been trying to force my geek fandoms down their throats for years. This is the first Star Wars show that my 9-year-old wants to watch with me. And she's like, is it come out? Can we watch another one? We have to wait till next week. Is it out yet? And she's engaged. So there's a certain side of me that's like, well, maybe this isn't for me. Like, this might not be my Star Wars anymore.
Yeah. Whereas the boys, on the other hand, is definitely mine. It's definitely for us. Like, that's not for the kids.
Yeah.
That's for us.
Yeah.
I'm like, yes, this is what I want.
Yeah.
Or the Invincible comic, which has been turned into like an animated series on Amazon or on Prime.
Amazon,
yeah. That's all. That's good.
Yep.
It's not worth the full Prime subscription though, because that's like $20 a month sort of thing. But
I don't know what it is in New Zealand. I think $10
something like that.
I don't know. I probably need to go through and cull my subscriptions.
Disney and Netflix are like $20 each.
Yeah, it's getting ridiculous. Yeah, it's almost getting to like, we got these things because they were cheaper than Sky, and then all of a sudden now we're.
I was supporting you, Netflix, when you were sending out CDs via the mail. I was ordering them from you then. So where's your loyalty, eh? Where's my legacy discount? That's what I want. They don't care.
Yeah, no. They don't give a fuck. I mean, there is a lot of good stuff being made. Yeah, I don't know. I don't have enough time in my life to go. I mean, I subscribe to all these things, but I don't have enough time in my life to go through.
So whatever we cover next week, remember to tune in because we've been there, we've done that, we've read all the lore. Plumb our depths of information, and also like realize that we're just talking off the cuff mostly. This is stuff that we actually are just pulling out of our heads. We don't have our cell phones. We don't have Google generally open.
This is all from memory and stuff. So hopefully, obviously, AJ has a history. I don't. I'd like to, maybe I've proved my geek cred slightly here.
I am a super geek though. Like literally, this is my entire life.
Yeah, you are an abnormally new store of this stuff in your memory. Which is why I like having these conversations with you.
It's different when you're talking to somebody who's been around since before smartphones were a thing, where we literally did have to hold this information in our head, and you may be the only person who've read this comic or something, and you have to describe it to somebody else. So we just built that way. Like we're built with this capacity, and also we were raised by a generation of people who were like, if you can't get it right, don't do it at all, sort of thing. So we had to remember their instructions verbatim because they just assumed all kids were stupid.
Yeah, and we also grew up in a time where things went. If you didn't see it at the movies, it didn't come out for years. Even sometimes it didn't even, like Star Wars didn't even come out on VHS until mid 80s,
until like ET was around.
So we had to see that film and just remember it.
I had a sticker of that keyboard playing blue guy on the side of my bed on a drawer. That was it. That was my entire bit of Star Wars memorabilia nostalgia stuff.
Yeah, I had the audio, not the audio book. I had a
and that's one of the most merchandised movies in history. And I had one sticker that I got from, I think, a Georgie Pie Happy Meal type thing. Georgie Pie. In New Zealand, we eat hot pies like you guys eat burgers. It's a secret to our enormous success.
All right. We've got 10 minutes. I think that's our first show, man. So I'm going to stop recording. We'll figure out what we're going to do next week. I know. Yeah, maybe we'll open this up to a Patreon or I don't know, or a Discord or something. Maybe eventually.
I'm definitely keen to put it on my Patreon because they're always asking for unique individual content from me. So this is perfect. Fits the bill.
Yep. Yeah, and we can have some votes there. I know we've got a handful of things that we want to go through. There's stuff that I don't know. There's stuff that AJ maybe doesn't know, but it's probably a smaller pool there. I know there's a few franchises we've talked about in the past that we both have passions for.
One thing I don't know enough about that I'd like to know more about is the SCP franchise, if you could call it that. Are you familiar with SCP? No. Wow. Okay, so SCP stands for Secure, Contain, Protect. It's like movies like Warehouse 13, or when Indiana Jones gets the Ark of the Covenant and goes to a warehouse and put away with thousands of other boxes with God knows what else. So each one of those is an SCP, a case file. So the Ark of the Covenant would be a case file, and it would be Indiana Jones was the operative who was blah, blah, blah. He's not associated with SCP, but some government agents that collected it were. And it's like, it's an unofficial body of completely organically made lore. It's either it has no canon, and yet it has absolute canon. And the canon is basically determined by what has memed itself into the lexicon of understanding of all the people who like SCP stuff. And so it's like really hard to research because it's like, and then I get people who are fans of SCP who like come in and check out my videos on D&D Monster Ecology, and they're like, oh, that's just like this, or that's just like, you use that image of this, now we're all going to die. I'm like, what? And I have to find out. It's like, oh, this is, it comes from SCP lore.
No matter how nerdy or how geeky you are about something, there's always someone that can take it to the
I'm
next
described as the Voldemort of D&D. And Voldemort is this guy who does Warhammer 40k lore videos, and he talks in a nice, relaxed sort of fashion like I do. And like, yes, I would be him if I did Warhammer 40k lore, and I could quite happily do Warhammer 40k lore. I could have easily done that as a YouTube channel rather than Dungeons and Dragons, but I just decided that I wanted to learn everything about Faerun, so making a channel about it was a good way to do that. Turns out it was a very good idea.
It was. And I'm going to piggyback off that fame and
fame.
Yeah, and we're just gonna spend our Sunday mornings diving into some really geeky fucking shit. Hopefully. So anyway, I need to go to the toilet again. Third coffee. Perks have been in your 50s, boys and girls. Drink through 3 coffees and they go straight through you.
If they can get past your swollen prostate.
I'll go. That's the episode title there.
My swollen prostate. Oh, we could talk about Warhammer 40k.
Yeah, I mean, that is something I know nothing about because it scares me.
Dude.
It's overwhelmingly.
Don't worry, the Emperor protects.
Have you ever walked into a Games Workshop store in the UK? Like, I lived in the UK for a while, and I popped my head in there, and that was like, whoa, this is next level.
It's like a church.
Yeah. So All right. I'm going to stop recording anyway. We can carry on talking. Thank you.